Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Every Horror Film, where horror is forever. And today, we're going to read you a bedtime story, but a scary bedtime story. The one that keeps you up at night, the kind that makes your kid yell at you and hate you and throw stuff at you.
That's the
And
best kind.
yeah, I mean, what's better than that? We are talking about The Babadook from 2014. It has been a couple years since I've seen this movie. I saw it when it first came out in 2014. I was very excited for it. I heard a lot of good things about it, which seems to be the norm for every year. There's always a scary movie of the, oh, you have to see this. This is the new Exorcist. This is the best
Uh-huh.
film ever. Films that get this kind of hype. So I remember I saw it back in 2014 and I really enjoyed it. I did. I thought it was a very good film and I had pretty high praise for it. I watched it again a couple years ago. I still really enjoyed it, but this is the first time I've seen it in quite a while, and I was very excited to get back to watch this movie again to give my final kind of opinion on it. Jeff, give us your thoughts on the Babadook. What do you know about it? Your experience?
I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, 2014 came around. I remember everyone online and even in person, like, "Oh, Babadook's the scariest horror film of all time. This new movie out of Australia is the scariest horror movie of all time." Is what it was being advertised to me as. I had no idea. I'd never seen a trailer. I went into it blindly. I was with a couple friends. We just went into it blindly. Granted, it was the middle of the day and we weren't really paying attention. But when I got into it, man, and I watched the whole thing, I'm not gonna lie, I hated it. I thought it was the most overrated piece of shit I'd ever heard. Like scariest movie of all time. You're out of your mind, dude. I do not get the hype. Never watched it again. A decade flies by, and believe me, it flies by. Here we are in 2024. I'm 10 years older now. I've seen a lot more movies. I'm a little bit more critical. I'm a little bit more deep thinking when it comes to my films and a little more objective, I would say. And, when I was 10 years younger, I thought it was slow and, and artsy fartsy and stupid. But now watching it for the second time, 10 years later, even being a parent and being an adult and having my golden rules and comparing it to everything that we've seen since, I think it's slow. I think it's artsy fartsy. I think it's smart, but I still really don't care for it. I know I'm going to get struck down for it. I don't hate it as passionately as I did in 2014 because I understand it a little bit better. I mean, I understand it completely, but this was like the beginning, like dipping your toes in the water of like horror becoming elevated horror. We talked about it a little bit with the Lodge. We haven't really gotten into the whole
Mm-hmm.
generation of elevated horror yet that came out of the late 2010s. But this, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is probably one of the earliest adapters of that whole idea, huh?
It's so funny you point that out because that was going to be one of the first things I said about this movie is it the first elevated horror movie of all time? I don't really know where that timeline
I
starts,
don't know what the first
but
would be.
this really was one of the beginning films of that type of subgenre. Stuff that we're seeing now from like A24. And, a lot of that stuff works for me. Some of it I really enjoy, some of it I don't really care for. I think it just depends. But this really has the elements of the beginning of that, of, when we say elevated horror. Um, and to me, I actually like this movie because of that, because to me, it's not to me personally, it didn't beat me over the head with it as much as films do nowadays, where it seems
Mm-hmm.
like they try to go way too hard in the artsy fartsy department, as you
Yeah.
say. Which, if you're going to do that, that's fine. But I want to have some kind of story about it. I want to have, I hate being hit over the head with that type of storytelling. And I feel like in this film, they didn't do that as much as I know in films that are going to happen, in today's world. But Yeah, it's interesting you say that because I had a feeling that, you know, I just had a feeling that you might not love this movie, and
Man,
I'm not, I don't know, man.
hey, me in elevated horror, man. It's just it's ugh, it's hard to find one that I like that's not too pretentious.
Was
This
it the child actor? Was that it?
It wasn't even the child actor. It was the eagerness of the audience to go online and prove that they understood it before you did. It was kind of like the audiences of Inception. When it came out and no one really knew what it was about, the know-it-alls in class would rush and be like, "Oh, you just didn't understand it because you're just." It takes a certain level of intelligence to understand Inception. It's if I felt like it was that way with the Babadook when it came out because audiences weren't all about the elevated horror, but also because you were advertising it to general audiences who were just coming off of The Conjuring, Sinister 2 years prior, a slew of remakes. So horror hadn't really broken ground in that area with the general audiences yet. So I think I was just put off by people's response to it and how blown away they were by it. Um, Even though I'm not as favorable towards elevated horror, quote unquote, I get it. I mean, it's the message is not lost on me. The allegory is not lost on me. I understand the movie. I just
Yeah.
I just like the thing more. You know what I mean?
Hey, I don't disagree with you. And as far as anyone that, you know, by the way, of course I own this on
Oh,
Blu-ray.
of
Okay,
course.
okay, okay. I just
All right,
had to
calm
put that
down.
out there.
Sorry, you're better than us.
Let's I just had to let you know. As far as this film, people saying this is the greatest or this is the new no, it's not. Okay, I can tell you that. Maybe to you or to someone watching, it might be one of their favorite films of all time, and that's fine. To me, it's a very good movie, but is it that level of film? No, most certainly not. Okay.
No, important disclaimer here. Even though I'm kind of knocking it down a few pegs, this is a damn good movie. It really is. It hits, I think, all the marks. We're gonna find out over the course of the next hour, but it 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 does the trick. It really does, and yeah, it kind of paved the way for elevated horror to reach general audiences. So yeah, don't think that any criticism of this movie is saying that it's a bad movie because let's face it, The Babadook is not a bad movie. It just might not be your flavor of movie.
Sure. All right. Well, let's open up this storybook and get into this thing. We're kind of introduced in the very beginning in kind of a dream-like sequence of events where we see this woman who we know to be Amelia. She's the main character of the film. Basically, it's a sequence where she's driving to the hospital with her husband. They get in what looks like a car accident, and come to find out the husband dies in the car accident. And really, the reason they were driving was because they were having she was getting ready to have a child. She was giving birth, so they were driving to the hospital. So we find out a couple years down the road. I can't remember how many years it was, maybe 7 or 8. I'm not sure. And come to find out, the mom is single. She's a single mom raising this kid. And I got to tell you, man, there are I've read it online. There are people that absolutely despise this movie because of the child actor in this film. Now, you know how we feel about child actors. I personally, once the movie unfolds and you see what happens, I understand why the kid is the way he is. But from a first glance, if you don't know anything about this film and you just go in, you're gonna be like, God, this kid is freaking annoying as shit.
Yeah, it's very, very easy to gravitate on first watch to like a stance of, hey, I get it. I get it. This kid's fucking annoying, man.
Yeah.
Like, and yeah, we have our feeling about child actors, but the point of this character was to seem unlikable. I mean, you're here on Amelia's side. You're here to see what she's dealing with. The kid is written and acted well, I will say, to be as unlikable as possible. And the moments where he's sympathetic and likable, it really shines through. So I can't tell you where it would rank on my list of child acting performances, but I would say that I've definitely seen a lot worse The kid is 6. I don't know if the actor was 6 when he was filming it, but hey, I can tell you from firsthand experience, he acts like a 6-year old, and to act like a potentially mentally damaged 6-year old, a mentally damaged 6-year old who's also striving for attention, mentally damaged 6-year old striving for attention, who's also potentially seeing ghosts. Hey, good work, kid. You did a good job. I'll give you that. You get
Correct.
some praise from me.
You are better than the kid from whatever Freddy movie it was where he goes, "School's out, Krueger."
School's out, Krueger. Fuck, dude. Every
Oh
reviewer gonna
man,
mention that, man. I
we
hate
have to.
it.
That and some sort of Family Guy reference.
Oh, of course.
But getting back into the movie, like you were saying, we see that Amelia is really going through a tough time. Her son's acting up in school. His name is Samuel, by the way. He's really acting up at school. He's acting up at home. He's very loud, kind of does this obnoxious things. He really believes in like the boogeyman, I guess you could say. And like a lot of younger kids do that age, they believe in like somebody in the closet or someone under their bed and things like that. So, she's dealing with that, and she's dealing with having to be a single mom. They don't really live in the best environment, kind of a rundown house. She works at a retirement or a nursing home or something like that. And though she's just kind of bogged down by the everyday, role of being a single mom taking care of this kid. And this kid, since he's so scared of the boogeyman, he makes all these elaborate traps. He's got like throwing darts, and he's got like this thing on his back that like latches and throws balls. I don't know, man. This kid, he's kind of a genius to be that young, building all this stuff. But he's pretty much ready to fight the boogeyman because he believes he's real.
Yeah, and the Kevin McAllister type traps and contraptions that this kid is building. I mean, a catapult backpack. I'd be lucky if I could build that now. I'm scratching 30, dude. So this 6-year-old a catapult backpack that's like strong enough to break glass. Hell yeah, kid! And he got like a crossbow made out of the
Yeah.
baseboard, like, and he knows how to use firecrackers. Like, yeah, there's a conversation to be had about like mom enabling that, but also, whew, I think it might have been Reddit, it might have been one of the other websites where I was seeing how this kid was like it wasn't disclosed fully, but it was kind of like hinted at that he had like Asperger's, or he was like on the spectrum or something like that, something with high intelligence but poor social skills.
Yeah.
And how this movie plays into the difficulty of raising a kid with those kind of challenges. So, hey, kudos to you, kid. You want to build a catapult? I'm jealous of you.
Yeah, and I agree with the theory that someone said that you mentioned that is possible.
Yeah.
But so basically, this kid, he's going to school one day and he's bringing these traps to school, and they call his mom and they're like, "Hey, we need you to come to school. Your son is acting up again. He's brought these traps," and they're pretty much expelling him from the school. And then she's like, "No, screw you. I'll just take him to another school, figure it out. You guys don't care about helping my son." And so they were having a bad day. The kid's crying in the back seat, throwing a fit. I mean, it's just the worst. And they get home, and one night they decide to sit down and they're going to read a book. So, Jeff, do you read your daughter bedtime stories at
Oh, of
all? Is
course,
that is
every
it
night.
every night? All right, fantastic. So if you were reading a book to your daughter one night and you'd never seen this book before, you don't know how it got there, and she picks it up and you start reading the details in this book, what are you doing with this book?
I'm gonna be honest with you. She could pull out all the books on her bookshelf right now, and I think half of them I've never seen in my life. I don't know. And I don't think she's seen them either. So to have a book randomly appear in a child's bookshelf, not completely unheard of. But if she pulled one out that looked like this and it read like this, I'm taking that book. I might read it a couple times because it's very interesting, but I'm burning that thing. I got a fireplace out there right now. We'll get it going because don't have that book, you know?
Yeah, so they start reading a book called Mr. Babadook, and it's this pop-up book. It's got a red cover, scary kind of drawings in it. And as they start reading it, the kid kind of gets freaked out, and the mom's like, where have you seen this book? I don't know. It's kind of weird. And then they keep reading it, and eventually, they get to this one part where I can't remember the exact words, but the Babadook is like, you so and so, or you'll die, or whatever. So
Mhm.
it's very intense for a children's book. And she shuts it. Samuel's crying, and he's freaking out. He thinks it's the boogeyman that he's been preparing for, this Babadook guy. So they go and put the book away, whatever. And then the next day, she pulls out the book and tries to look for like who the publisher, the author is. Can't really find anything. There's no information, and there's some empty pages left in the book. So don't know how it got there. Scary book. But pretty much when they read this book, that's when things start to kick off, essentially.
Yeah, basically when she opens the book, it kind of invites it in. Um, and obviously the kid doesn't react well to it, but mom, she puts it up high out of reach where he can't get it, thinking that that's going to solve the problem. It Throw it away. I mean, why why are you keeping it? What attachment do you have to this book? I get it that it's weird and you're scratching your head on it, but I don't know. That book needs to disappear. But so the pages have been turned and the book has been opened, and I don't think this is the point where she rips it up, but she looks at it again, and there's some blank pages at the end. So the
Mm-hmm.
story is not finished. So we're gonna find out later on throughout the movie that more pages are added to the book. Parts that we didn't see the first time around, which is cool. It's a cool concept. But here's where people start to get a little confused because obviously, elephant in the room, the Babadook, this being, this entity, whatever, is not literally a character. It's supposed to be an allegory for one of a dozen right answers. Most commonly, it's grief. The Babadook is an allegory for postpartum depression. The Babadook is an allegory for like it, repressed thoughts of child abuse. The Babadook is an allegory for you name it, man. There's no wrong answer out here, but the point is the Babadook is not literally a Babadook. The Babadook is supposed to be a manifestation of Amelia's emotions. Okay, cool. But she opens the book, and that invites these emotions into the house. How do you feel about the Babadook, this creature in a hat? How do you feel about him being a manifestation or an allegory versus being an actual demon like the likes of Conjuring or Insidious?
I think, I mean, you really can look at it both ways. I'm not 100% sure. Sorry, someone just walked in my front
There's
door.
the Babadook.
That's the Babadook. So yeah, as far as I think you can look at it both ways. Yes, is it an actual character? I mean, we do see the Babadook physically throughout the film, but as you mentioned, it is an allegory for other things as well in the movie, grief, trauma, depression, everything we've heard before.
Mhm.
I can see you going either way with it. I see what you're saying about, maybe this person has already had this trauma and grief about losing her husband, and then all of a sudden she reads this book and then that provokes it. I don't know. Is that maybe there's something within the book that provokes that or unleashes like a spell or an entity to happen? I don't know. I mean, I could see either way with it if whatever you prefer to choose. I actually like thinking about it as more of an actual character. And
Mhm.
I'll explain that later, but you can also look at it more as an allegory as well.
That's what I went into it expecting. I expected it to be like as she opens the storybook and the house becomes haunted with this demon character we've never seen before. As surface level as that might be in horror, that's what I went into it expecting. That's what I think a lot of general audiences went into it expecting. And anyone who was at a loss for why this movie is good probably wanted that. Obviously, we've grown to understand allegories and appreciate it a little bit more, but I don't know, man. I kind of teeter the fence between what I want because I like what we got, but I also kind of just wanted a demon movie.
Sure. I am always in favor of having like a character in
Mhm.
evil that's not like an allegory. I prefer like a physical form of a ghost, demon, monster. I don't
Mhm.
know. That's just always what I prefer. But to each their own. And so, a couple weird things start happening around the house. Sam, his behavior is getting bad. Amelia, she's kind of always like grabbing at the back of her jaw or teeth. They have food one night, and all of a sudden there's like glass or something in it. They really start to kind of turn against each other. The kid is very much like, you don't want me to have fun, you don't want me to have a birthday, you don't want me to know about my dad. And then she's kind of trying to handle all that grief of what happened, and she kind of takes it out on him. And we see she has a very strained relationship with her sister, and Sam's cousin. They go over there, they hang out, but recently, like, the girl, they don't want to have a they want to have separate birthday parties. They don't really like to hang out. um they just don't like being around this kid, and you really feel bad for him because, yes, on the surface level, he is annoying, but he's having all these factors put in, things that really aren't all his fault, and he's getting blamed for it. And it's really just, to me, I found it a little bit relatable. As kids do these type of things. They pick on people. They are isolated. Some kids are, and I kind of started to feel bad for the kid more than annoyed. But yeah, all these bad things are just happening over and over and over in his life.
Yeah, and it is very as realistic as horror can get. It is a pretty decent depiction of a potentially mentally damaged kid striving for mother's attention when mother has nothing to give. It makes sense. I mean, we give our kid pretty damn good attention, and she doesn't act like that. But hey, it'd be kind of cool if she had a catapult. Just gonna say, but I think the kid acts. He's understandable. I understand why he's acting like that. I understand why he's pushing his cousin out of a treehouse when she's bullying him. You know what I mean? So he suddenly stops becoming this screamy, whiny brat that we hate as an audience and starts to become like a wow, you are the victim here. I get it. It's not Amelia being the victim, it's you. So it's it's one of those things you got to grow into. Maybe audiences weren't ready for it in 2014, but that's pretty commonplace now in horror, like we said. But it's a good theme. It's pretty deep. It's pretty layered, and to get that kind of storytelling out of a child actor, that's pretty good.
Absolutely. Yeah, he really did a good job. All the acting in this film is really, really done well. And you mentioned the part about getting pushed out the treehouse where they go to this birthday party for her cousin, or his cousin Ruby, and they're all sitting there, and the parents kind of feeling bad for her, and they're looking at her, and just kind of looking down on her a little bit. Well, they let the kids go out and play, and basically the little girl, his cousin, starts bullying him, talking about it's funny to like, it's not funny, but it's funny like the way it was. She's like, you don't have a dad. Your
Dude,
dad's
kids are
not
brutal,
real.
dude.
I mean, yeah, that's what I mean, like, kids are brutal. Like, the stuff that like we used to say and
Oh
to
yeah,
each other, like, as
unhinged, dude.
kids, like, I can see why kids are the way they are sometimes because of the
Hmm.
things that we say. But she's saying like, your dad's not real, your dad didn't love you, that's why he left you, like, your dad's dead, like, all, I mean, just this fucked up stuff.
Yeah.
And basically the kid loses it, but the way it unfolds in the film, it really looks like it was his fault. She didn't do anything wrong, but he pushes her out of the treehouse. She breaks her nose, she's bleeding everywhere, and then the tension, I mean, between the mom and him, it's at a 10 out of 10. I mean, it's she's pissed, he's pissed, he's in the back screaming, they don't know what's going on. It's just like all this stuff is building up, this all these bad decisions keep happening and happening, and it's at a breaking point essentially.
Yeah, and when you're not in the treehouse watching him get bullied, it's very easy to take Ruby's side on that. Even if Samuel was able to explain his way out of it, no one would believe him. I mean, she was bullying him, but mom wasn't there to see it, so obviously it's the deranged kid's fault. So yeah, he's screaming. We get the meme like, "Why can't you just be normal?" And he screams at the top of his lungs, and He does this thing where he stops throwing his fit and he immediately just goes and looks over to the other car seat. I got to chill from that scene. That was pretty damn good for a kid, I got to say. The way he suddenly looks out the window like he saw something, that was a very well executed shot. Very well executed reaction shot, I should say, because stopping a hysterical fit and just going and then seizing up or whatever he did. Very well done. And kind of made the hairs on my neck stood up a little bit. Like, yeah, the Babadook's clearly in the car there. I get it. So I like that scene a lot. That might be my favorite scene from the movie, but we're gonna find out.
Sure. Yeah, and this is when they see an apparition of the Babadook, kind of like climbing over the hood of the car, like this black figure, and they're not really sure what's going on, and she's freaking out. And then that's when he's having a they pull over the side of the road, he's having a freak out, and then he ends up having a seizure, and all hell's breaking loose. They take him to a child psychiatrist or a pediatrician, whatever, and they're like, I don't know what's going on with my son. He's like, it could be this, it could be that. We're not sure. Like, she's like, can you please put him on some medicine to like help him sleep? I haven't slept in weeks, blah, blah, blah. Doctor's like, sure. So they go home, take medicine, good night's rest. Everything's looking up. Well, not so fast, Mrs. Amelia, because the front door starts getting knocked on. She goes outside, doesn't see anything. Goes inside, more banging, comes outside, looks around, doesn't see anything, comes back, more banging, comes outside. The book that she threw away and tore up and ripped apart has reappeared. That's
Of
right.
course.
The book has returned. At some point in the story that we did not mention in this review, she got rid of that book, tore it up, threw it away, burned it. Didn't want anything to do with it. The book comes back. It's on the front doorstep. And yeah, all hell's getting ready to break loose.
Yeah, it's a nice like gradual escalation of events. Like from the moment the book is first opened on that night to he keeps talking about the Babadook. He's scaring Ruby to she's losing sleep and failing at her job to he's pushing Ruby out of treehouse. They're having a screaming fit. She rips up the book. She doesn't want, she doesn't want any more talk of this stupid Babadook. She rips it up and it keeps escalating, keeps escalating, keeps escalating. She finally thinks she solves the problem with the sedatives and puts him to sleep and finally gets a good night rest. Yeah, the book's gone and you're getting a good night's rest, but you wake up the next morning, kid's awake. The book is back. So she freaks out. She goes and she burns it immediately. And then she goes to the police department to report that someone's stalking her and how they're giving her this book. She doesn't have a good explanation for it. The cop doesn't really believe her. She's got like ashy hands or whatever. And he gets ready to fill out a report. And behind her, behind the cop, is a coat and top hat and gloves hanging on a coat rack in the shape of this Babadook character. I like that. That's super cool. I
I
love
love it.
stuff like that, dude. That's a really fun little tool. I love that. I want to see more of that in horror.
Absolutely. And that's something they do quite a lot in this film, where there are things in the background that look like the character of the Babadook. And it's just in the background. Sometimes they interact with it, sometimes they don't. It's just one of those things that's always there in every scene, it almost seems like, and always has that presence of the character looming. And I think that's a great thing. But yeah, she goes to the police station. They're like, okay, where's the evidence? They're like, I burned it. They're like, well, can't help you there, lady.
Like literally what do you want me to do? But yeah, things are escalating, and I think this was the point where I gotta so
I got it.
something we forgot to mention when she picked up the book before she burned it, she looked in it and there were new pages added. Remember how I said there were blank pages? Well,
Mhm.
these new pages started talking about how you're gonna be dead, and it showed the mom character in the book strangling the dog. So new pages were being added to it, and it started to freak her out a little bit more.
Yeah.
I saw that dog kill coming a mile away, and not just because of the dog picture.
Dude, if you're ever watching a horror movie and you just see like a dog like in the house running around or part
It's
of the
gonna die.
family, it's gonna die. It's just I hate that trope, man. I dock points from a movie for unnecessarily killing a dog. Now,
Yeah.
if the dog is like risking its life to save the person, okay, that's one thing. Like they're going out in a nice manner, a triumphant manner.
Right.
But a dog just out there hanging out, just being a dog, and then all of a sudden it just gets killed. It's like, what the fuck, man? Why?
Yeah. Yeah. I talked about violence against kids when it comes to pushing boundaries in some of these movies, but violence against animals in that aspect, like killing the family dog, that is very, I don't want to say it's overdone yet, but it's done enough to not be a boundary anymore. So I can't really give points there.
Yeah, no, it's just one of those things that's like it pisses me off because it doesn't add to the story. They're like,
No.
oh, we're hardcore, dude. We'll kill a dog or a cat. I'm like,
Like most of this
wow.
movie, I forgot there was a dog in the house.
Yeah, so at this point things are reaching a breaking point, and if you're watching this movie, you really feel that because the characters do such a great job of acting, building that tension where it's just like, man, if this was me and my mom in this situation, or if this was happening at my home, all these things going on, things are reaching a tipping point, tensions building. This film really does a good job at that, and at this point, we really haven't seen too many scary scenes. It doesn't really feel like a horror film in a way that you'd be expecting. It's very much just tension and regular life things happening, and that's what really builds it up. But we finally get to a point, things take off. One night they're going to bed. Sam, he's definitely had a couple nightmares. He's no stranger to sleeping with his mom. And this is probably my favorite scene of the whole movie. She's sitting there, she's trying to go to sleep, and she hears like this scraping noise outside, like the bedroom door, and like banging, like someone's like walking around the house carrying a rake along the floor. She goes to open the door, it's the dog. So okay, no big deal. Closes the door, goes lay back down, hears it again, but this time she sees something kind of sneak in there, and it just this feeling of like the crawling up the wall and the sounds that it's making, and she's hiding under the covers really builds the tension. And she pulls the covers down, and all of a sudden she looks up onto the ceiling, and the Babadook comes down and jumps into her mouth. And I love that scene. I think it's great.
Yeah, that's probably it's probably the highlight scare of the movie. I so let's talk a little bit. We'll talk at the end, but let's talk a little bit about the creature design and the reveal of the Babadook. So he's revealed with the scraping and kind of that raspy voice doing the Babadook Dook Dook from the book on the door. And every time he's around, there's like this fluttering of like insect wings.
Yeah.
And then, like an insect, as he scurries across the ceiling, it's very choppy, not like claymation, but like stop motion, flip book style, very weird. And him falling onto Amelia, it's like 4 frames per second. It's a really unique artistic choice there. Was that a win for you? That kind of depiction of that character?
It was. I loved it.
Yeah. What do you like about it?
I I just like the look of the character. My favorite look of the character is there's a so we haven't talked about it, but Amelia, they have a neighbor, a next door neighbor. It's an older lady. She's just very nice, always checking on them, always kind of there for them. And there's this one scene where Amelia is washing dishes, and we have the class of like, you look, it's not there. You look back, it's there. You're like, oh, but it does it so well where she sits there, she looks at the old lady, she sees her watching TV in the living room. So, oh, that's nice. And then she turns back around, she's washing dishes, looks back up, and then you see the Babadook in the corner. That's my favorite showcase of the character. It's in the shadows, but it looks creepy and it's effective. I like the look. I like the top hat, the kind of the fingers. It's the elements of many different horror characters to me. And I like the kind of sound effect, like the insect sound, and kind of the way it moves. And it does this, try not to forget one thing I love about this movie is that, it is not taking place in a book, but elements from the pop-up book, if you've ever look or opened a pop-up book or seen one. So they take some of that and apply it into the film, and some of the kills and the way the Babadook moves and some of the things that they do. It's kind of like it's happening in the book. And it was a huge win for me. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was unique. And mostly it's probably because of the low budget. I think the budget was here like 1.5 million or 2 million or something like that. Low budget. And I think if the Babadook jumped down from the ceiling and it wasn't 4 frames per second and it wasn't stuttering like that and it wasn't storybook, I think it would feel awful. I think it would not translate well. I get what they were doing. The Babadook as the character and the whole vibe of this horror-esque movie, it's I picked it up this time around. I did not pick it up the first time. It's so reminiscent of the old original horror films, old black and white, old school 1920s, like Frankenstein, Nosferatu, whatever you want to call it, man. The old black and white silent films that were scary. That is what this is, like a modern recreation of. All the way down to his look, like a top hat and long gloves and
Mhm.
eyeliner. Like that's silent movie scary. So yeah, very cool homage to the silent film era of horror and the pioneers there. Very Nosferatu is what I got from this.
Yeah,
I like that a lot. That's something we don't see a lot of. I mean, we see homages to, like, God forbid we don't see an homage to the 80s, but and an homage to the black and whites. Hey, that's a win. I like that.
perfect. I agree. I agree. Man, I can't wait till we review some of those movies. It's gonna be
I
so
gotta get
much
into
fun.
it. I can't wait.
Dude, it's gonna be great. So yeah, I think we're both a fan of the character design and kind of the elements there. So when this happens, essentially we have a bunch of events where Amelia has become, I'm not gonna say possessed. I mean, I guess you could say, but not like the Exorcist kind of way. She's just more been taking over by this grief, all this stuff that she's been holding in is finally taken over, and she's really taking it out on Sam. She's yelling at him, cursing at him. She's not feeding them. She looks terrible. They're not sleeping. The house is falling apart. I mean, we get a lot of moments where it's the tension. It's kind of scary because the actress does such a good job of like she's just sitting there and she just will lash out on the kid. She's like, "How about you eat shit and die?" And it's like, "Oh my god!" Like, damn, like that scared me. Like, it's very effective how that works, and to me,
She
that is a bit
snapped.
scary. Yeah, literally snapped.
Yeah. Yeah, and finally you start to see the bigger picture of, like, okay, the Babadook was just her desires for infanticide or whatever it is. She just is tired of this kid. She's fed up with him. She cracked under the pressure. And there's a good message about the kid seeing that coming. Kids aren't stupid. They're aware. They watch your face way more than you realize. They know when something's up, and Samuel seeing the Babadook was really just yet another allegory for him seeing this coming. He knows his mother's feelings about him and his dad's situation. So when she finally did snap, he was like, I've been preparing for this my whole life. And he runs and gets his catapult, he's hiding. God, I feel so bad for him because now the table's turning. I do not sympathize for mom anymore. I just don't.
No, mom, he's prepared just like Laurie Strode prepared 40 years ago
40 years I've been preparing.
for this night. I knew we'd come.
That's another reference we do every review.
It happens every time.
I
I
know.
can't control myself. So yeah, as we mentioned earlier, this kid he believes in like the boogeyman, the scary monster under the bed. So he thinks this is it. So this kid's prepared. He's ready to go. But this mom, dude, she's hell bent on killing him. We see the foreshadowing of the dog kill. She does it. It sucks because I'm like, again, killing a dog for the sake of killing a dog. Child services comes. She's saying all this weird stuff, and they're like, hey, like we might need to kind of take this kid away. Like, this is some bad stuff, and the kid's sedated on drugs that she got. So pretty much mom is losing it at this point, and she snaps and she goes and grabs a knife. She cuts like the phone cord because the kid tries to call it's either the
Neighbor.
neighbor or the aunt or whatever, and it's like, hey, like we need help. And
Hmm.
so mom, I mean, at this point, she's lost her mind pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, she's basically fully possessed. And, we're skipping over some points here, but let's talk about the brunt of it, man. She's fully possessed. She's fully in murder mode. She starts to see hallucinations of her deceased husband, the father of the kid, and she sees him in the basement where she keeps his stuff, where she doesn't allow Samuel to come in, where Samuel set up his final trap. She starts to see a hallucination of him, and he's like, he's like, just bring me the boy. And from a line she said earlier in the movie, she doesn't like that term. So
Mm-hmm.
she starts to kind of snap out of it a little bit, but she's okay for maybe a night. But even that night, she's having hallucinations of killing him. So the ghost dad, zippity bobbity ghost dad, that's kind of dumb, you know. I don't think that's really adding anything. If anything, it's taking it away. I kind of feel like the ghost dad was a hat on a hat. I mean, obviously she misses him, and obviously she's personifying her negative emotions into this Babadook creature. But a ghost dad saying, "Bring me the child," that was kind of hokey to me. But tell me if I'm wrong here.
I don't think you're wrong. I agree. It's kind of one of those like, hey, don't forget, like, remember the dad died, and this is like kind of where everything stemmed from. It's like it was better off when they just showed the opening scene of the wreck, and he's just mentioned. That's kind of all you need. You don't need to
Yeah.
see him come back, and because we know it's an hallucination. We know it's not real. And then whenever he says that line, it's like, oh, it's the Babadook trying to take over. And yeah, I probably could have done without that. And you mentioned the basement because the basement really comes into play. It's shown in the film, but the ending really it is where everything goes down. Earlier in the film, Sam's down in the basement. She doesn't like him there because that's where she keeps all her husband's stuff, and he goes down there and plays with it and will go down because he wants to be a magician. Throughout the film, we see he kind of likes magic tricks and doing stuff like that, and that's where he would do that stuff down there. And the mom was really against him playing with the husband's stuff because it's hers. She doesn't want it to be touched. She keeps it locked away down beneath. See what I did there?
I see. We all see what you did there.
So at this point, yes, she snapped. She's going after, and he's hitting all the traps on her. She's walking around with a knife trying to kill him. She's fully taken over at this point. And then we make our way into the basement, and this is where he hits her with the Kevin McAllister, and she falls down the stairs, and he ties her up,
Just so you
and
guys know, I have a tarantula.
he he ties her up, and he's just kind of in the corner, and she's like let me go, and then he's all like, mom, like, I won't leave you, I love you. And like that line was such a good line from the kid. He's like, I don't care what happens, like, I'll never leave you, I love you. And that's just like it really makes you do a 180 on the kid. He's a good
Yeah,
kid, okay.
he's just got some demons. But yeah, no, it's good. And even those who hate the kid for how whiny and annoying he is, and only see it from the mom's side, he does a good job portraying that sympathetic, like, oh dude, like that sucks, man. Like that's such a terrible situation to put your kid in, let alone be in. So yeah, he starts to gain some sympathy points there for sure. And she kind of starts to snap out of it, and like his loving nature makes her kind of like see the error of her ways, and she, another allegory, throws up the Babadook, gets it all out of her system. And
Mhm.
you think that'd be the ending of the movie. They go upstairs, and suddenly it's, pretty sure this is the scene, but the kid's like, you can't get rid of the Babadook, and he gets hoisted up the stairs, and she runs after him, and they have the whole bedroom showdown. This is the climax of the film. It's the big action set piece of the film where bed's shaking and the Babadook's in there. It was pretty rough, huh?
I I can't. There's this one scene where he's getting taken up the stairs like invisibly, like he's just glowing, and then he goes in the room and there's like no noise, and he just hits the wall and he falls
It's,
down. It's just like there's no like dramatic effect. He's just like, oh, it
it's
just
just
falls
like,
down.
ah! It's
And
like
she
picking
just
up a kid.
he just looks at him. It's just I don't know, man. That scene is like so funny. I was like,
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's like they only had one shot and it was like the practice shot and it was just like super slow. It's like, all right, I'm gonna pick you up and throw you at the wall now. Yeah, it was
just
pretty funny.
dead silent, just hits the wall and falls on the ground. I don't know. But yes, that scene where he's like, you know, the Babadook, you can't kill the boogeyman, whatever. And I really like this scene. I take it back. This might be my favorite scene. One of my favorite scenes where we see the bedroom throughout the movie, and it's kind of like she's the bed's over here and the rest of the room's over here, but the other side of the room is very cut off by shadows. It's kind of like it's only a half of the room, and so we kind of see like it coming from the shadows, and the Baba looks like coming back out, and she kind of walks up to the dark, and this is where she has this kind of standoff moment where the kid like starts floating in the air. It's trying to take it like in Poltergeist, and then she's like, "You can't have my kid, bye! Like you can't touch him. This is my house." Like all this stuff. I don't know. I mean, yes, we've seen it before, but I thought the actress just did such a good job. I actually really enjoyed that scene. It kind of felt like her getting her mojo back a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, she's kind of coming to terms. She's like addressing head on the emotions that she's been tiptoeing around the whole movie, and the personification of the Babadook with his extendo arms, but you can't see the face. It's kind of like a mannequin, like on wheels. You could argue it's like a pop up book, but yeah, pretty creative choices. Again, I don't know how you can have a one on one conflict with an allegory like that and do it any differently. But yeah, the extendo arms and the wind thrashing around the room, pretty good. I got to tell you, the sound effects pretty god awful in this moment. There was one like stock dinosaur roar sound effect that he did, like,
Oh, yeah.
is that the best you could get, dude? That was from like that was from like the original Land of the Lost or something. That was like a pterodactyl screech or something. Kind of a bad choice. I feel like you could have at least voiced and distorted something a little better. So I didn't really like the sound effects, but it is what it is. And you don't show me the monster, so I'll give you points there. Um, she ends up overpowering it with her words, and the clothes of the Babadook drop on the ground like flat, like Obi-Wan Kenobi style. And
Mhm.
like all seems kind of peaceful. And I think either she or Samuel touches it, and then like we get this weird flashing shot of like it's just flying up above her head, and she stares at the camera for like 2 seconds too long, and then it like scuttles out of the bedroom down into the basement. Not the climax I was hoping for, man. I don't feel like that was a lot of payoff, but what do you think?
I I think it obviously we're going to talk about the ending, but I think it would have been better if they maybe kind of just left it at that point. What comes next isn't it's not terrible, but I do kind of like the like it rises up in the camera angle where it's like just focused on the person's like perspective, like she's looking at the camera, and then it like runs and follows it downstairs and then into the basement. But it is kind of interesting how I feel like they've defeated the at first she threw it up, so it's like okay, like she threw it up, and then now we go upstairs, they have another fight, and then she's like, okay, the clothes fall down, okay, now she beat it, but now it comes back up again. It's like, man, like how do you defeat this so-called monster? Which we will explain next. But yeah, it was kind of a weird scene, maybe not the best. I like the artistic aspect of it, but I see what you mean.
Yeah, it's kind of like there's like two rug pulls of defeating the monster before this, so it has like, how do I believe this one? But it scurries down to the basement where she traps all her emotions and her nostalgia for her husband. And cut to the next week or whatever, and it's everything's all bright and cheery and color saturated. It's the birthday, everyone's happy. Amelia's being a good mom. Samuel is feeling the love and feeling the attention. Happy ending for the family. They're digging up worms, and they bring those worms to the basement to dun 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 feed the Babadook, where she is apparently keeping it as a pet. What were your thoughts on this ending? This is a very divisive ending.
I gotta be honest, I actually, if this movie was made in 2023, 2024, I would I would hate this ending. I would hate it. But since this happened before like the whole elevated horror genre took off, this kind of happened before I expected these kind of endings, and I'm actually okay with it. I don't love it, but I'm good with it. I think if this would have film would have been made in today, and we had all these kind of cliche endings like this, where like you don't get rid of the problem, you deal with it, you
Mm-hmm.
learn how to live with it. I probably would have been like, I probably would have turned the movie off. But I don't know, something about this. I don't hate it. I'm actually okay with it. I can definitely see why people don't like it because it is kind of weird, an interesting way to end a movie. But I'm actually okay with it just because of the time frame of when it happened.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you're right. It was at the beginning of this elevated horror where every A24 film ended with our protagonist in a horrible situation, but they're okay with it. You know what I mean? Like it became a trope.
Yeah.
And yeah, it once you realize that this movie and the Babadook itself is an allegory for repressed emotions, it makes sense that it's down there in the basement and not completely dead. Because when you're talking about complex emotions like that, like repressed urges to kill your kid, that's not something that you can just yell at and it goes away. Otherwise, therapy would only happen once and not every week. It the My problem is I get it. I get the idea of living with it and coping with it rather than defeating it. Like it'd be a little too unrealistic to say you defeated these horrible feelings. I'm okay with the idea of living with it, but what I'm not okay with is the very like, and I'm probably wrong about this, and I'm probably understating its importance, but the basement, the whole aspect of the basement, and as this locker for repressed feelings and fond memories, like the whole like, it's so on the nose that it almost feel like the rest of the movie isn't as on the nose. The rest of the movie isn't as on the nose, but the basement is just too on the nose. You know, like we get it, man. She's got fond memories that she's keeping safe from her kids. She won't let them see. You'll see it when you're older. Like the whole aspect of the basement, I think, is a little too hammy for me, and it's not subtle enough for allegory like this. Um, I don't know. If I were to do it differently, I probably would have the showdown in the bedroom, but instead of scurrying off to the basement, like we cut to the next day and we find like she comes up to her room to change her clothes and she opens up that wardrobe and the top hat and coat and the long gloves are hanging there in the wardrobe. And instead of being scared of it, she kind of like looks at it and acknowledges it, but shuts the
Yeah.
door and moves on. Like that would be a better, I think, representation of living with it than this really like hat on a hat basement ghost dad thing.
Yeah, I agree. It is a little hammy because in the way it you physically see them dealing with it. It's like, okay, we've trapped the monster and we have to go feed it, get it. Like we all have to deal with our demons. Like
Right.
I don't have a problem with the message because this message has been done a gazillion times. But yeah, I could see why it is a little annoying, I guess you could say. How they literally show her going downstairs to feed it. It is kind of
Yeah,
interesting.
it's just like, yeah, no shit, dude. Like, if you're gonna be this poetic allegory the whole time, you don't have to literally tell me "Oh, she's going down to the basement where the memories are."
Yeah.
I've gotten this far. I get it, you know. But I also think that relates back to the debate between, do I want this to be a demon ghost haunting movie, or do I want this to be an emotional allegory movie? I can't have both. So
Sure.
I don't know. That's just where I'm at with it. All in all, this is a good movie, man. This is a smart movie. I got it the second time around. I'll admittedly did not get it the first time around. Do you feel like you got it? Do you feel like you got a good understanding of it?
I feel like I did. I feel like I understand what they're going for. I mean, definitely going the route of, excuse me, you know, repressed memories, trauma, depression, going through, all, stuff that we have. I feel like we've discussed at nauseum on this channel some of the movies that we reviewed. But I definitely get it. I think another good ending, you mentioned the whole opening the closet and seeing like the hat and the coat. They should have did an ending with the book itself. Maybe finish the
Yeah,
pages with some of the how the movie ended. Maybe they keep the book because, like, we all people have photo albums of books from back in the day where they keep pictures of old times and stuff of people. Maybe you keep the book because, hey, yes, we don't want to deal with what happened, but hey, we do have this memory of it and we acknowledge that.
yeah.
Something like that could have been a cool way to go about it, maybe.
Yeah, even keep the book in the basement instead of the actual Babadook, or just have a shot of the book staying on the kid's bookshelf or something like that. Like, or the mom putting it back on the bookshelf, whatever, like there are more subtle ways to deal with the climax of this film that are as equally subtle as the buildup of this movie. So yeah, I didn't even think about the book. That's a good point. I'd like to see that book come back. I feel like the book could have been a big selling point, and
Yeah.
like if I saw that book at Barnes and Noble, it'd be like $40. I feel like that could be a huge marketing tool.
It's funny you bring that up. I looked it up because I wanted to see if you could buy the book as, like, just a prop or something to have. They did a quick like they released like a certain amount of copies of it. God, I can't remember. They were so expensive, but they're out of print now. You'd have to buy it off eBay or something.
Hmm.
But which would have been sick. Like if you would have pressed up like, maybe not the whole book because I get it's a lot to do all the pop-ups and stuff like that. But if you'd have just made something similar to that and sold that, dude, I'd have bought one.
Yeah, dude, I'd love to have that on my shelf, like, and open it up, be like, oh shit, like my house is haunted now. Like that could be like a modern day Ouija board. That'd be sick.
Exactly. Why
You
didn't
know,
they do that? Part
I don't know
two.
why they didn't do that. I mean, the literal name, the Babadook, is an anagram for a bad book. So why didn't you capitalize on the book more, dude? I'd buy one. I don't
Yeah,
even like this movie that much, and I'd buy one.
exactly. So yeah, they end up defeating the monster by, learning how to deal with bad things that happen in your life. Okay. And that's the end of the film. So um yeah, since I bought the Blu-ray, I'm gonna go first, okay?
Take it away.
This is what, the third or fourth time I've seen this movie. I think the third. Um I do enjoy it. I think it's if you're looking for like a movie that's going to scare you, this is not the movie for you. This is more of a storytelling dealing with psychological type, issues, psychological thriller. There are some horror elements in here. There are some scenes that, not scary, but that can kind of get you. I do love the character of the Babadook. I like the design. I think the acting in this film is really, really well done. Essie Davis is the actress. She killed this. I think she did a great job. The young kid, he did a phenomenal job. It's a very
Mm-hmm.
contained movie. I like the tension building of all the bad things that happen. It's just like all this stuff happens and happens. Eventually, it's going to reach a tipping point. I like the setting of the film. It's kind of in this old janky house. It's very got elements of old school horror, like German expressionism, like you kind of mentioned, Nosferatu, things like that. I really enjoyed the film. Is it, what people were saying it was? No, but I do enjoy it. The ending, not the best. I don't think it took away from the movie, but I think they could have did it better. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go B minus for the Babadook.
Hmm.
I think it's a solid movie. I'll probably go back and watch it again. Is it up there to push the boundaries? Do this, do this, do that. Actually, no. But you know what? No, I changed my mind. I'm going to give it a B, a solid B. I'm going to give it a solid B.
That's good. Yeah, that's fair. Um, yeah, I mean, what you said, this is a good movie. This should be at least B tier for everyone. But no, I don't think it's A tier. I think it's damn close. But there's a few things that have been done before and since then that are kind of more deserving of A tier. Yeah, one thing that you just said that we didn't even talk about was the setting, the visual storytelling, the house. I mean, obviously this has been over explained on YouTube, but the pale colors, the grayscale, the dreariness, the cold color grading, the windows being closed, the curtains drawn, corners of the room that aren't even, the room's not that big, but yet the corners are embraced in shadow, like very obvious, like visual storytelling. Things are
Mm-hmm.
dreadful and gray when she's feeling the way she does. And the few moments of happiness she has, the color grading is kicked up, the saturation is better. So well done. I'm not going to explain to you every example of that because you get it, but this is a good looking movie. This is a well put together movie. And I can tell that the script of this movie had a lot of love put into it. I can tell that it was written and rewritten by the same person, make note, to just be the best version of it that they have in their head. And it really paid off. This seems very passion project to me. Very, I don't want to say homage to classical cinema like Nosferatu, but it's very this person did their homework. This
Correct.
person did their homework and really wanted to stand out from the crowd, even if that meant not blowing up the way it did. So props where props are due, and that is where it's due. Um, my problem with this, and this relates to my four golden rules that I'm going to give you, is I don't think this this movie is grandfathered into the genre of horror in the same way that Silence of the Lambs is. It's not scary. It just deals with scary themes. When I come to a horror movie or when I put on a horror movie, I want to be scared. I want to be scared for somebody or myself. That doesn't happen here. So when people are talking about this, the scariest movie of all times, my walls go up, dude. You've never been more wrong. This is not scary. Very good thriller, like Silence of the Lambs, scary themes, but not horror. I wouldn't consider this horror, even though it's technically considered horror.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a hard time grading it with my golden rules, but I'm going to try it anyways. Rule number one: don't show me the monster. Monster obviously being the Babadook. Nailed this one. Every shot of the Babadook, as few and as far between as they are either 2 seconds long or embraced in shadow or choppy framing, or you never get a good look at the Babadook to the point where you need to go on Google Images and actually see an idea of what he looks like. Great
Correct.
job. That's exactly what you should be doing. I don't want to see a whole body shot of the antagonist here. So, yeah, great job. Yeah, just great job. Rule number two don't rely on or be scary at all times, not just when the threat is on screen. Again, you're not scary, you know. You're present. The chills are present. The creeping themes are present. I feel the growing tension every moment of this movie. But it's only when you view it on surface level that you think that this movie is about this demon haunting this family. It's not about that. So therefore, the threat is never off screen because the threat is the mom. The threat is the mom and her emotions. And the movie is always focused on the mom and what she's feeling. So all the way down to the color grading. So no, even conversation aside about it not being scary, the mom is always on screen. And the mom is the scary aspect of this movie. So no, I can't give you that one. Rule number three: don't rely only on jump scares. The I'll say creepy. I won't say scary. The creepy moments that you do have are not jump scares. Him standing behind Mrs. Roach, or the extendo arms, or the hat and gloves behind the police officer, or the scurrying on the ceiling and then dropping down.
Mm-hmm.
Well done. Creepy. I like those scenes. Those are the highlights of the movie. And those aren't jump scares. So I'll give you that in regards to how scary you actually are. And number 4, push the boundaries. Like we said in the beginning, this is at the cusp of this new era of elevated horror, where the threat is not some guy standing over there. The threat is inside or in your head or all around you, or it's the world, or allegories out the wazoo, man. We live in the A24 era. We can't get enough of it, right? So at the time, 2014, that was still a boundary that hadn't really been pushed in terms of general audiences. So yes, using a demon as an allegory rather than a threat is a really good example of pushing the boundaries storytelling wise. I really wanted to avoid it, but I'm going to say it again. If you kill the kids on screen, that's a real boundary, but we didn't get that in this movie. And let alone, there were no deaths in this movie. Other than the dog, there was no killing. There was no blood. There was no physical violence other than pushing a kid out of a treehouse. So
you're right.
Again, you're grandfathered into the horror genre, but you came in and you made a name for yourself by pushing these boundaries of storytelling and using this paranormal aspect as an allegory rather than an actual threat. So I'll give you that one. You broke new ground. You didn't make huge steps in the genre, but you broke new ground for the time, and I'll give you that. So you got 3 out of my 4 golden rules. That puts you in B range. I like this movie. This is a good movie. This is a well-made movie. Even my little concerns with it are just me. They're not general objective concerns with the movies. That's just my personal preference. This movie is a lot like a Kendrick Lamar album to me. It might be damn good. It might be one of the best in its respective field. I guess it's just not what I'm trying to hear that day. You know what I mean? It's just not what I'm trying to put on at the moment. I can't hold that against the movie, but it is what it is. So we're in B range. You're a well-made movie. I don't own you on Blu-ray. I probably won't. I'll give you a B. I'll give you a B. I respect you, and I respect all that you did, but I can also respect the fact that you're not for me.
Any extra points or less points for the kid getting thrown on the wall scene?
You know? Oh, dude, I gotta watch it on YouTube after this. That's so funny.
When you mentioned the poor sound effects, I was like, you should have mentioned the kid just hitting the wall. He just
like, oh, we forgot to put sound there because he
just hits the wall and falls. I'm like, they forget to like,
and that's it. Like,
get over that.
It's like 4 feet. Like he traveled 4 feet. Like he didn't drag him to the bed or the ceiling or behind him. He just like, you're going over here now.
Oh my god, that's probably my favorite scene. I can't lie.
I gotta watch that. That's funny.
That is good. So yeah, I would definitely, if you haven't seen the movie, check it out. This is a good precursor if you like some of the more modern films that have been coming out the past couple years. You might like this. Kind of seeing where maybe some of that stuff started. So yeah, that will be it. This is the Babadook review for us. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you have any recommendations for anything you want us to review, let us know in the comments below. We appreciate it. We will watch any movie, any horror film, because that's the goal. We're going to review every horror film ever, okay? I don't care if we're like 100 years old on YouTube. We're still going to be doing it.
We're going to get them all. What did Exorcist Believer say? We're going to need all of them.
We're going to need all of them, okay? And a quick note on The Exorcist. Obviously, David Gordon Green getting bumped from that project. Oh, yeah. I think they're going to scrap the whole thing and just start all over.
Good.
They probably should.
Don't even start over. Just end it, dude. Be done.
Yep. Call it The Exorcist The Ender, and then just don't make it.
Yep. There you go.
So thank you guys so much, and we'll see you on the next one.
The mummy has now been located.
The living mummy.
The living mummy. Bullets won't stop.
Some creature out of time.
It was horrible. It was horrible.
He's completely out of control.
I saw those bodies.
Is he a man or a monster?
You actually knew a will in a peaceful town where nothing ever happened.
It was horrible. It was horrible.
In the mystical regions of Transylvania,